All right, it's 2:47, so let's get started at this point. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your interest in understanding our journey, how we leverage the platform to improve our customer, in this case, our consumers, our developers' experience, and giving them a more productive platform to enjoy the productivity what they want to bring back to our business. So that's what the next 45 minutes we plan on discussing. My name is Karthik Loganathan, and I manage the CI/CD platform team, and Giri will be getting into the details of the discussion around like what was the problem statement and how we leverage the Sonatype platform to create value. So that will be our discussion for the rest of this 40 minutes. So how many of you here are Discover customers? There's quite a bit, so I don't have to talk a lot about why you guys are all the happy customers of Discover. And I also know Aaron back there controlling our audio is also a Discover customer, closing to like about 15 years of anniversary. So thank you for the customers. Others, we are not only many of you probably know us as the credit card company. That's where we started our journey in 1980s. Actually, we are the direct bank and a payment services organization as well. So that's the attention and the stress. And as you can see there, it's really $143 billion in the credit card revenue compared to our banking portfolio, which has been growing pretty good from our direct banking, from a deposits, personal loans, and student loans perspective. Very recently, like last week, actually, we celebrated our $50 billion direct bank deposits milestone, and that is also a great opportunity for how we use that for underwriting our loans portfolio. And also, like it's a student loans time. I hear that it's a peak season. So if any of you looking for a good product and a great customer service, what you got from our card side of it, we are open for student loans. So look up us as well there. And we also have the what we call Discover Global Network, which is comprised of our three brands between Diners Club, Discover Network, and Pulse. The Pulse is our debit network. That's also like in a pretty good growth trajectory at this point. So that's our complete portfolio as an organization as a Discover. It's like a credit card, bank, and payment services organization. So we are kind of a full financial services organization. So looking at our industry recognition, we kind of look at that as the strong employee recognition as much as our customer recognition. And specifically on this year, we're kind of looking at how the technology organization is being recognized as well. So everybody everywhere talking about the diversity. Even in today's keynotes, it's about diverse. So you can see it's the best place to work for the millennials, the women, and LGBTQ. It's kind of all diverse group of people we are looking for, the right talents, and that's how the organization is like delivering the customer value. And if you have not seen it yet, up there by the third floor in the keynote speakers, the superheroes of our organization as the DevOps is presented there. Go take a selfie and post it there. We'll be allowed to see that. So some of the other recognitions from a leading technology CIO perspective, there are some of our recognitions there as well. I just quickly touch upon, if you wonder from a CI/CD platform perspective, would we have a high-level stack? So that's our stack between GitHub Enterprise, CloudBees, SonarQube, and Nexus. So rest of this here we'll kind of talk about how we leverage the the Nexus platform capability in bringing that portion of DevSecOps, right? So DevSecOps has multiple components of security features, what we are talking about. In this particular conversation here, what the different capabilities of the Sonatype products we leverage to be able to provide the better experience for the developers. So the next two slides are really that industry trend and the data from Sonatype itself, how the software and the open source is evolving, right? So every business is a software business. Software is eating the world. That's all been done. So now as part of that software evolution, how much is the open source is, really dominating, or how much open source is contributing to that faster growth and development perspective is the chart. It's pretty much about any of the chart where we look at what are the top 10 value of the companies, or the top 10 value companies. If you look at them, it's all the Googles and Amazons and whatever. It's kind of same, right? When you look at open source, is really dominating or contributing more to our software development lifecycle. And as the demand grows, and this is the life cycle of 15K releases per day. This is again industry data, but we are not like anything different than the industry. We are kind of in the same trajectory, how our open source adoption is, and what type of open source packages are being used within our own organization as well. So most important thing here is like, okay, as we kind of getting this open source tooling, what are the major challenges to be able to leverage them better? One of the things is like it's a hockey curve, right? So it's slow adoption, but when it's there, you need to be able to keep up with the demand and keep up with the expectations of it. And once it gets there, it's kind of two different aspects of it. One is the development community. This is what I need to be able to do better and to be faster, to be more productive. The other side of it being some set service organizations with the responsibility of making sure how can we meet the demand at the same time, how we can be responsible, making sure that what we bring in is good, right? That's the two major challenges in the balance perspective. So this is other data. What we find is also that says 90% most of the softwares what we deliver, the application packages are really packaged based on all the other frameworks and tools available, and only 10% of customization are the real logic getting added to it. So it's kind of the same story. So that kind of highlights the need for that amount of open source what comes in, and how we need to really keep on top of it. So with that being said, when the developers needed the unfettered access to what they needed, so it's also need to be more relevant and fast and actionable and real-time feedback what we can provide to them. So that's why we kind of looked at the tooling capabilities what we have. So in this particular set, I would say open source is great, yes. Is it risky? I think we all know that how risky it is. So the question what we're going to kind of walk through from here is Giri is going to kind of look through a couple of the use cases. How risky was it? How we leverage the platform or tooling to be able to address that, and what's the takeaways from here? So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Giri.
Thanks, Karthik. Am I audible? Okay, great, thanks. So Karthik, hello everyone. My name is Giri Rao, and it's my first time speaking at DevOps World, so thanks for being here. I think Karthik did a fabulous job of highlighting how open source is relevant in our software development ecosystem, or basically in our supply chain. We all know it's risky, and one such incident which kind of opened our eyes to some extent was the flat map stream incident, which happened sometime November last year. So EventStream is a really popular NPM package, and a hacker really, what he did was, he had malicious intention. So he introduced it as a transitive dependency called flat map stream. So every single time you are downloading a popular package, which is EventStream, almost like 3 million downloads a week, and indirectly you're actually getting the malware as well. And an important point to highlight here is there's a difference between vulnerability and a malware. Malware here is like completely with a bad intention in mind. So this is how it kind of shaped up. I mean, even though the package was introduced in like 2011-ish, there was no activity at all. But suddenly there was a lot of activity sometime like 2018. And then it was very targeted for Bitcoin. So there's a pay called Bitcoin copay. And then the intention was to steal the Bitcoin stuff. What if it was not targeted? Anybody of us could have been affected. And that's the risk what we are dealing with. I mean, this slide kind of highlights some of the popular ones. I mean, Equifax, we have spoken about it a lot. The recent one which happened, I wouldn't call it as a vulnerability thing, but it kind of shows that hacks are something which you cannot really predict. So we cannot slow down, nor we cannot like code review like every single component I'm using it, because software now is assembled. So what do we do? So one such answer or one way of solving it is the Nexus or Sonatype platform. So Nexus IQ is actually a really powerful system. It's like the heart or soul. So all the policies are kind of defined in Nexus IQ. So things like which is a good license or which is a bad license, or what CVEs are kind of acceptable, what CVEs are not acceptable. So those kind of policies are defined at scale here. And the second thing is, I'm a huge fan of automated governance. When we are talking about thousands of components, I mean, we just realized that Discover, we have more than 7,000 open source components across like Java, Python, Node, and there are so many other languages kind of coming up. Go is kind of recently what we introduced. So Nexus IQ is the place where we define the policies. And then there's a component called as Nexus Firewall. So think of it like a software firewall. So the network firewall we know kind of blocks the malicious traffic kind of coming in. So Nexus Firewall is more like a software firewall. So based on the policies we have defined in Nexus IQ, we can stop them at the perimeter itself. So this blocks any net new addition coming into the ecosystem. I will say we kind of turned it on sometime December 2018, and we have blocked over 600 components. So those components never even entered Discover ecosystem. And this not only works for Java, but it works for Node, Python, NuGet, Go, many other languages as well. See, one thing is what we have realized is you cannot really have the developers curtailed to, okay, everybody is supposed to use Java. We need to give them freedom to pick whichever tool or whichever programming language what they prefer, and also using the right program for the job. So we all spoke about how we don't want to let bad things coming in. But what about the grandfathered components which are already present inside the Discover ecosystem? So that's where we are saying Nexus lifecycle, we will not let it out. So the policies are already defined in Nexus IQ. So the firewall and lifecycle kind of use the same rules, same policies, so that there is consistency. And then in the morning keynote also, you kind of heard that shift left, right? I mean, we need to give developers the feedback as soon as possible. So for certain programming languages like Java, in the IDE itself, when I'm doing my build, I can know how many good components are there, how many bad components are there. For certain other programming languages like Node and Python, as part of your CI ecosystem, you can kind of scan and get to know how many risky components or how many CVSS 8 out of 10 or low-risk components are present. So this is a snapshot of how application composition report looks like. So for a particular application, you can kind of know that how many are like critical risk components, how many are medium risk. So depending on the risk appetite of the organization, you can start fixing it. So this basically helps you to prioritize the risky ones first. And another thing is very crucial is the modern software approach requires like very actionable, right? Which means that I not only tell you where the problem is, but how to fix it. So this slide here kind of shows that we are using the Extreme package, and then the version 1.4.6, because you see a red mark below, it shows that, okay, this is vulnerable. And now you kind of see what is in the green. So 1.4.10 is kind of good component. So this is the level of precision what is needed for the developers to fix their vulnerabilities. So this is one of the key things. Very few competitors or very few tools are actually giving you this actionable information. And so we saw that Nexus Lifecycle, IQ, all are great tools. But if it's very difficult to onboard, then it's like game over. So the boarding process has to be like very simplified. So we had a shared library, and each component not takes more than 2 minutes to board. I mean, we were trying to gamify it. So one application, 2 minutes. So let's say 100 applications, like 1 hour. So we kind of gamified it. And we have almost more than 1,500 plus applications already onboarded onto this platform. So the key highlight is we need to make the onboarding process like very straightforward or easy for folks to adopt. The other thing is there's also particular things like you can define stages. So there's a build stage and a release stage. So we don't want to curtail the developer experience. So during your build phase, you can still allow folks to use a bad component or a vulnerable component, but at a release stage, you can kind of block it so that you don't allow that application to go into production. So not all times, let's take a scenario where all the versions for a particular component are, let's say, vulnerable. At that time, what do we do? So that's where the triage process kind of comes. The triage is we kind of reach out to our cybersecurity team and say that, hey, this is a component. So sometimes the cybersecurity team kind of looks into it and finds out, okay, this is probably medium risk, or maybe I'm not using the particular vulnerable method. So based on that, you do get a waiver. So, but the waiver always has a expiry date, so it's not like a permanent waiver. So you do get like 60 days or 90 days in order to mitigate the vulnerability. We wanted to get some reports, right? I mean, at an organization like Discover, we support like card, bank, and payment services. So at a card level, how many malicious or vulnerable components are there, or at a payment services level. So the Nexus tool right now has APIs. So we've leveraged these APIs and built a dashboard using Grafana, which will help the executive management as well as our teams to kind of know where the issues are and how do we fix it. By the way, this is all cooked up numbers, so don't pay attention. So till now, we were focusing a lot about the security aspects. But believe it or not, even license is kind of very important. So actually, if the graphics were supposed to work, I was supposed to go one by one. There are more than 1,200 open source license types. I mean, the popular ones are Apache, GPL, Mozilla kind of stuff, but there are a lot of things like buy me a beer license, or there are many other licenses which are like, depending on your enterprise, you might want to use that license or may not want to use that license. So you can define policies, like how you defined a security policy where saying that, okay, CVE of X and above is kind of considered bad. Similarly, here you can define like, okay, these licenses are good, these licenses are not good. And also you can get an application-wise license composition report. The other thing is sometimes by using a particular open source license, you can actually incur cost, right? I mean, if you're using an AGPL license, sometimes you, let's say an application like your .com application is using an AGPL license. In that case, you need to make your whole .com application open source. So it's the effect is pretty catastrophic. So this report kind of helps you to identify where the AGPL components are and kind of mitigate it. And also, finally, we need to save time. Sometimes for a particular component, there is an observed license and actually a declared license. So sometimes it's important for you to know, even though there are like 3 or 4 observed license, which takes precedence and what should be considered as a license. So till now, we spoke about how has our journey been in terms of like onboarding and also like what have we done. But this is probably only 50 or 60% of our journey. There is more to go. Like the first thing is, we want to identify whether it's a primary or a transitive dependency, because sometimes primary dependency, you have things in control, whereas the transitive dependency, you don't. So today, in order for the waiver process, or even for like what components you're bringing in, the dependency tree is a functionality which is kind of missing. And I know that Sonatype product management team is kind of working on that feature. The second thing is you want some kind of an automated dependency management, which essentially means that right now, it's kind of overwhelming for developers, because if there are like so many releases happening, how do you kind of keep up, right? I mean, technically our folks are used to like keeping the components for like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or even like 3 years and not really doing anything to kind of upgrade. Whereas in this modern world, like 6 months, you have a particular module, somebody in some corner of the world would have found out a vulnerability. So age is kind of proportional to the risk. So how do you kind of keep up? And that's where the automated dependency management really comes to your rescue. The third thing is, we know that the component is bad, but are the applications really using that particular method or not? Today, nobody in the industry kind of precisely can provide you that data. So that's another thing where we have been kind of requesting the team to provide us like very actionable information, because the component could be bad, but am I really using that method, or am I really exposed to that vulnerability or not? And the last one is architecture policy. So you heard that we have used it for security policies and then license policies. But sometimes we want to define like architecture stuff. So let's say Spring Boot is end of life August first week. It's actually almost done already. So how do you kind of know that how many applications are using Spring Boot or not? How many applications are using, let's say, a particular Node.js package or not? So the architecture policy, again, is kind of very crucial for that. And this capability already exists in the product. So we want to kind of utilize it now. So I definitely want to say future is here. The reason is, just to tell you a story, even like 2 or 3 years back, if I wanted an open source component, it used to take us 6 to 8 weeks in a good scenario to get that component. So which means that it could even be worse until, let's say, 16 weeks to get it. Now with Nexus kind of scanning at the firewall level, and then our legal kind of saying that how many license types are like approved by default and how many are not, we are saving weeks. So you can get a component, any open source component, in minutes, whether it's Java, Node, Python. The manual vetting was like so painful because once it comes into the Discover ecosystem, we used to rarely scan it for vulnerabilities. Now we have a very proactive way of scanning it. And also, like today, the component could be good, but tomorrow it could be bad. So at that time, we get actionable information like every single day that, okay, there are 3 components which kind of changed, or like CVE score was like 5, now it is 8. So it's a constant, we need to be constantly vigilant of this changing security landscape. So that's kind of the crucial. And then, and also, we used to like basically not tell them to upgrade at all. So let's say we bring in a particular component, it used to just remain there. Now, I will really say that we have built certain utilities where we kind of go to the latest version, which is like not vulnerable, and then kind of keep it dependent always, up to date. And this is my favorite quote, actually. This is from Sonatype guys, that applications don't age like wine. I mean, like wine, you want to keep it like for years and years. It is like milk, which means the components have a shelf life. And it's very crucial that you kind of upgrade it or keep the dependencies like updated, like maybe every month or every 2 months, depending on your risk appetite. So with that, I would say thank you.